while Chui Hongtai was holding the dragon egg in both hands. He bowed his head and closed his eyes. Princess Jinju turned around, placed one hand on her waist, and while holding the magical staff with the other hand, she closed her eyes and explained to Lu Fan that the Abyss Fragment dungeon had been cleared. While Han Qi had her hands resting on Lu Fan's chest, they both turned towards Jinju, and he asked her what she meant by him being her slave. Princess Jinju turned around, and upon seeing that Lu Fan was speechless, she mocked him by saying it was understandable for a non-existent guy like him to be scared when seeing such a powerful dragon egg. Lu Fan activated the system, causing a statistics window about the dragon egg to appear. This egg was an Ankylosaurus egg. Its level was unknown. It had 32 points of strength, 67 points of agility, 35 points of spirit, and 133 points of resistance. This egg had two abilities. The first one was called Hard Shell. The Ankylosaurus naturally had a tough outer covering that reduced any damage received by 10%. The second ability was called Sweeping Strike. This ability allowed the Ankylosaurus to swing its tail and inflict damage on targets within a fan-shaped area. Upon reading this information, Lu Fan quickly came to the conclusion that this egg belonged to a species of land dragon which was even more primitive than a wyvern dragon. While Lu Fan was closing the system window with his hand, he closed his eyes and began to wonder how the princess could call this thing a dragon. After thinking about this, he told the princess that the dragon egg's abilities were quite good. Upon hearing this, the princess turned her head towards him and was somewhat surprised. She started staring at Lu Fan and wondered if he really could see the egg's statistics. She also started wondering if Lu Fan didn't understand what a dragon egg meant to a dragon master. Upon feeling the princess's gaze, Han Qi placed her hand on her cheek, turned her head towards her, and asked Lu Fan who they were. Lu Fan closed his eyes and with a smile, he reassured his aunt that he would take care of them. The princess approached Lu Fan, and while looking into his eyes, she explained to him that without a dragon master was worthless. She asked Lu Fan if he would become her servant, then he could become the most powerful profession ever recorded in history. She also asked him if he didn't get excited just thinking about it. Lu Fan turned his head towards her and with a forced smile, replied that he was quite excited. After saying this, he refused to accept her proposal. Upon hearing this, she was shocked as she couldn't believe that someone had rejected the proposal of a princess like herself. She couldn't help but get angry. She tightly grabbed the magic staff, and while her body was emitting a powerful energy, she started looking at Lu Fan with an aggressive gaze and asked him if he knew what he was saying. She also asked him if he was refusing to become her servant, and to become the master who would write the story of the dragons. Lu Fan's expression changed drastically. He began looking at the princess with an aggressive gaze and told them that if they had come to look for him only for this reason, then they could go back where they came from. He also added that he had no interest in either the egg or being her slave. Upon hearing this, the princess began to look down at the ground with an indignant gaze and clenched her fist tightly. Chui Hongtai stood up, and while staring aggressively at Lu Fan, he also clenched his fist tightly and asked him how dare he speak disrespectfully to the princess who personally was giving him the opportunity to succeed. After saying this, he mocked Lu Fan by calling him a fool who didn't know how to appreciate things. Lu Fan closed his eyes and asked him to stop talking nonsense as he was not willing to be anyone's slave. Upon hearing this, Chui Hongtai became somewhat confused. The princess began to stare at Lu Fan aggressively, and while pointing her finger at him, she ordered Chui Hongtai to teach him a severe lesson for mocking her. Upon hearing the order, Chui Hongtai clenched his fist and palm together, and while staring at Lu Fan, he responded with understood. Seeing this, Han Qi stood in front of Lu Fan and asked both of them not to get angry. She also added that if Lu Fan didn't want to accept the deal, then it was better to forget about it. Lu Fan simply turned his head towards the princess, and while angrily staring at her, he remained silent. Chui Hongtai approached them and asked her to leave. Seeing that she didn't want to follow the order, he punched Han Qi hard, causing her to fall to the ground. Upon seeing this, Lu Fan was somewhat shocked and confused at the same time. Quickly, Lu Fan approached her, crouched down, and while holding Han Qi's shoulders, asked if she was okay. While supporting herself on the ground with one hand, Han Qi touched her cheek where she had been punched with the other hand. She closed her eyes and reassured Lu Fan not to worry because she was fine. While the two of them were conversing, Chui Hongtai began to look at Lu Fan with a murderous gaze and slowly started approaching them. He prepared his fist to strike Lu Fan and told them that commoners who dared to challenge the noble princess of the kingdom of Tai Kai had no guts. Lu Fan ignored Chui Hongtai's words and asked her aunt to stand up. While they were distracted, he started moving his fist towards Lu Fan's head. Han-ki turned her head back, and upon seeing how he was about to hit Lu Fan, she called his attention and warned him about the attack. Just before Chui Hongtai could attack Lu Sheng, a powerful flame began to rapidly advance towards him. Luckily, Chui Hongtai was able to dodge the attack. Although in the process he received a small cut on his cheek, the person who had attacked him was none other than Lu Fan. While he was aiming at Chui Hongtai with the dagger, it emitted a powerful flame. He stared into his eyes aggressively and told him that he was going to kill both of them for attacking his family. Chui Hongtai knew that Lu Fan was not joking, so he quickly took a step back. While Han-ki was crouched on the ground, she grabbed Lu Fan's arm and, while looking at Chui Hongtai with a surprised look, asked Lu Fan not to rush. Seeing that Chui Hongtai had stepped back, the princess turned her head towards him and asked what he was doing. She once again ordered him to punish Lu Fan severely. While Lu Fan was looking down, he caught the princess's attention. Upon hearing Lu Fan's voice, she turned her head towards him. Lu Fan approached her and gave her a strong slap on the face, causing her to start falling towards the ground. He started looking at her with an aggressive look, clenched his teeth tightly, and ordered her to shut up and take away her servant trash and leave here. He also added that he didn't care if she was the princess of a kingdom. While Lu Fan was distracted, Chui Hongtai unsheathed the dagger and swiftly approached Lu Fan, asking him how a despicable person like him dared to lay hands on the princess. Just before Chui Hongtai could attack Lu Fan, he unsheathed his own dagger and with a precise movement struck his dagger, causing it to fall to the ground. Upon seeing this, Chui Hongtai quickly withdrew his hand and while looking at Lu Fan began to wonder what was happening. Quickly he approached the princess, got down on his knees, and while reaching out his hand to help her stand up, he asked her if she was okay. While with one hand she was covering the cheek where Lu Fan had hit her, with the other she began to stand up, and while looking at the ground, she started trembling. She slapped Chui Hongtai hard in the face, and while staring into his eyes with a furious look, called him useless and asked how he could think that she was fine. She gave Chui Hongtai the order to go and kill Lu Fan, since if she couldn't have Lu Fan, who was a dragon master, then she preferred him dead. Upon hearing this, Lu Fan began to stare at her with a murderous look, and while his dagger was emitting flames, he assumed a defensive stance. At the same time, in Lu Fan's room where Xiaoyu was peacefully sleeping on his bed, his phone started ringing, causing her to wake up. The person who was calling Lu Fan was Qin Q. When she saw that he didn't answer the call, she thought it was strange because this number was the one Lu Fan had given her when they had returned to the city. She called several times and seeing that no one answered, she began to wonder if she had dialed the wrong number. While she was walking, holding the magic staff in one hand and her phone in the other, she started looking at her phone and decided to search for Lu Fan's house location. At that moment, a big explosion occurred near her, causing her to quickly move away from the area. From Aunt Lu Fan's shop, Chui Hongtai was propelled outwards, while holding the magical staff with one hand and supporting himself on the ground with the other hand to stop his body in motion. Due to the noise of the explosion, many people started approaching the area. As Lu Fan's body emitted a powerful flame, he began to approach Chui Hongtai, who was leaning on the ground with the help of the magical staff. Upon seeing people starting to approach the area, the princess pointed her magic staff at them and addressed them as low-class individuals, ordering them to leave. Chui Hongtai, who was crouched on the ground with one hand holding the magical staff, placed his other hand on the ground, bowed his head, closed his eyes tightly, clenched his teeth and explained to the princess that Lu Fan's skills were not bad. Now that he had failed to follow the princess's order, he thought of himself as an incompetent subordinate. The princess began to look at Chui Hongtai with an aggressive gaze, clenched her teeth tightly, and called him trash for not being able to defeat Lu Fan. After saying this, she started to smile, and while her eye was emitting a malevolent energy, she decided to help Chui Hongtai a little. She grabbed the magic staff tightly, closed her eyes, and began to activate a spell, causing a malevolent energy to appear around her. Lu Fan approached a little and while looking at the princess with eyes of surprise, he realized that the spell the princess was using was like the opposite extreme of Qin Q. After seeing this, it didn't take him long to come to the conclusion that she also had a hidden profession. At that moment, Qin Q appeared. With one hand holding the magic staff, she started approaching Lu Fan and asked him what had happened. Upon hearing Qin Q's voice, Lu Fan turned his head towards her and asked her what she was doing here. At that moment, Chui Hongtai began to stand up, and little by little the princess's spell started to take effect. He extended his hands to the sides, causing a wave of evil energy to shoot out in all directions. Lu Fan and Qin Q quickly put a hand in front of their faces and started wondering what was happening. Thanks to the spell that the princess had cast, Chui Hongtai's body suddenly grew, and while he held the magic staff in one hand, he stared at Lu Fan with a murderous look and started advancing towards them. Chui Hongtai had the combat profession and was a level 30 guardian knight. Princess Jinju had a hidden profession and was a level 15 spiritual sorceress. Lu Fan quickly realized that Chui Hongtai had turned into a monster. While he was lost in his thoughts, Qin Qiu stood in front of him, and while she pointed her magical staff at Chui Hongtai, she explained to Lu Fan that she was here to help him. Lu Fan turned his head towards her and began to wonder what she was doing. Chui Hongtai gathered momentum and started moving quickly towards Lu Fan with the intention of attacking him. Seeing this, Lu Fan slightly turned his head back and asked her not to come closer. After saying this, he asked her to help take care of his aunt who was inside the shop. Chui Hongtai attacked Lu Fan using the magic staff, but luckily he managed to react in time. He jumped and quickly moved away from the area, causing his magic staff to hit the ground. Lu Fan moved several meters away, placed a hand on the ground, and stopped his body in motion. While staring at Chui Hongtai, he thought to himself that this creature's attack power had become very high. He believed that now he would need to use the dragon stimulus along with the dragon claws. Chui Hongtai stood up and while looking at Lu Fan, began extracting the magic staff from the ground. While the princess was holding the staff with one hand, she clenched her other fist, stared fixedly at Lu Fan, and ordered Chui Hongtai to end his life, as only in this way would she feel satisfied. With an evil smile, Chui Hongtai told Lu Fan that thanks to the princess's enhancement, he wouldn't be a match for him. At that moment, Xiao Yi broke through the second floor wall and emerged outside, leaving both Lu Fan and Chui Hongtai confused. While her body was surrounded by powerful flames, she began to smile, and upon seeing Xiao Yi's incredible power, the princess was shocked. At that moment, Xiao Yi transformed her body into the black dragon. Then, while she was looking at Chui Hongtai, she started roaring. Lu Fan simply put a hand on his waist and with a smile told the princess that now it was his turn to vent. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.